Hey everyone, Rascal here.
And Mama, welcome to our podcast.
Today we're covering yet another Monster High movie, Freaky Fusion.
And this is the perfect time because this time Frankie and the ghouls travel back to the beginnings of Monster High.
The real beginnings!
Yes, to find Frankie's grandfather, Dr. Frankenstein.
Yes. And before we start, be sure to like, subscribe, put notification buttons on future podcasts and multiple pause videos.
This was a fun movie. It wasn't scary at all. It was a lot of fun. There was unexpected plot twists several times in the movie.
Yes.
And we got to find out the backstory for a couple of the characters as well.
Right.
Not only Frankie, but also Rebecca Steen.
Yes. Which intertwines with the later one with Fright's camera action. Mm-hmm. Now, for here, this one really stood out because I know Mom really loves time travel stories. Mm-hmm. And we know here, unlike Japan, there's they always have to involve some type of time machine or a watch or something when it comes to time travel. So for this time, they actually had a underground time machine, and it specifically took them back to the beginnings of Monster High. Now this is the real Monster High origin story that you get here. You see when the school's first built, and there were actually monster students attending there decades ago, or even almost want to say centuries.
Yes, it was definitely centuries. And you got to see her grandfather young in college.
Yes. And they called him Sparky.
Yes. And somehow nobody realized that this was Dr. Frankenstein and her grandfather. Somehow they didn't.
I kind of wondered that too. It took that long to figure out. Maybe it was for the kids watching that maybe weren't catching on to it, make it a little easier for them to be surprised. You're right, that it was kind of weird because I kind of thought the ghouls would figure it out within 10 minutes. And even Frankie didn't figure it out.
Exactly.
By having no pictures of him, you thought, okay, you're trying to bring something to life. That's immediately him.
So, they end up supposedly coming back to the present, excuse me, but they didn't end up coming back alone or individually, I should say.
Right.
They end up having something go horribly wrong, and they end up being fused together. So the title, Freaky Fusion.
Right.
Yet the title.
And the whole theme of it, besides the fusion, there seems to be a theme of heritage or lineage and knowing your background and your family. And that actually ends up being a pretty fun thing within the movie when you see, especially with Cleo, hers is so dang long. She has the whole pyramid's worth of ancestors to tell the school, and she can go on for hours. And Frankie barely knew anything about her family. All you knew is her father was Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein. That's it. And she didn't know anything about Victor Frankenstein. So that becomes the whole theme of the movie, figuring out, who he was, so she can know more about him to tell. And they also have the inclusion of fusion monsters too, or hybrid monsters.
And here, as I mentioned, we get to find out Rebecca's backstory. Her dad, or creator, was also Dr. Frankenstein's professor.
Right.
And he is the one who also built the machine.
Yes. And it was interesting how they made everything connect with each other from the past and the present with all the characters involved. It wasn't just something was left there and they never went back to it, or, we'll leave it there, we'll go back to another movie and then never do it. They actually do pay it off by the end, and the movie's only barely over an hour, I believe, maybe an hour and 15 minutes. But the entire story and the little mystery in it, that's whether obvious or not, is still engaging.
No, he was the smart one here because when he saw her in the past, he really knew who she was.
Yes.
And he was like, I'm so happy to see you.
Yes.
I want a daughter. I built a daughter. Therefore, that's why she has the bronze or coppery skin.
Right.
That she looks like him, and he created her so he'll have a child. So she and Frankie should have a kinship, you would think.
Yeah, and that's one of the few things that I think they probably missed out on using for the show, because they took advantage of just about everything they did, right? So, yeah, you would think there'd be a little bit more closer connection with that, so I think they missed out on it. And another thing to point out, and it's one of both of our favorites, is that they have a play in here about the history of Monster High, and they're playing about when the humans and the monsters used to fight, when the school's built and everything else. And the main ghouls are in the play. But because they're fused, everything goes wrong. They end up having to learn how to get along in one body, and that's where they get the help from the hybrid monsters that are new to the school.
So let's tell them the fun fusions.
Yes. So the ones that end up getting fused are Draculaura and I think Rebecca, right?
I think so, yes.
Right. And you had...
How do we not remember that?
Right.
You should remember
And
a billion
yeah,
times.
sometimes there's a lot of characters in here.
And theirs was the one that had the least amount of problems, or they weren't bumping heads and fighting with each other.
They were
just trying to work in the same body. Dracula liked to fly, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And Rebecca wanted to go on the skates.
Right.
And they had a difficulty in trying to do that. That was the least of the problems in the fused pairs, because the rest of them just simply couldn't get along.
Right.
And all they did was fight.
And he had Claudine and Venus.
Yes. And of course, you know, she has the power of her plants, and you know Claudine. And then one of my favorite lines when she goes, Achoo! She's allergic to the plants, and she kept sneezing. And the other one wanted to just keep doing the plant growing, and she was getting frustrated. Mm-hmm. So that was fun. They were at odds.
And they had Laguna, and I'm sorry, it's been a while. I know there was a dragon character.
Yes, Jade.
Yes, thank you. Then the whole thing of the fire and water was already not mixing.
Yes, and they were just wanting to decide whose abilities would be in the forefront. They couldn't figure it out. They couldn't get along.
Right.
Both of them. Well, Jade had this kind of arrogance about her. Mm-hmm. Laguna was down to earth, and so again, there was a contradiction in personalities as well.
And then the funniest one of all was Cleo and Toralei, who all they did was fight every other minute. And my favorite is when she's doing the lines, and she's actually doing well, and Toralei keeps screwing her up, and she's saying all sorts of things. He's like, all right, Toralei, you want to go? Let's go. And she's trying to fight herself. She can't hear herself or claw herself, so she's kind of looking like she's losing her mind on the ground, and then the whole place starts falling apart and crashing down. And it's like the best part of the dang movie.
And since they fight when they're not fused, it's worse when they're fused.
It's your problem is that you can't get along. That's it.
And then we also got to learn some of the ghouls and man-stars who were sort of like, well, they said I can relate because they're not fused, but they have parents that are two different types of monsters, different things. So they're kind of like fusions themselves, and they can relate. Yes,
and they have some of the oddest pairings in here. When you hear it, it's like you almost cannot or don't want to imagine it.
The one that was the most interesting and oddest looking was the guy, the man star, who was a unicorn and a zombie.
Yes, it's like, I don't know how that one came out, and ironically, that's
even at Schoolia, that one.
Right, and ironically, that's the one that Frankie falls for, and is absolutely hilarious because he's a klutz on everything because of the zombie part. Then they have a ghost and a mermaid hybrid.
Again, don't know.
And then they also had a centaur and a moth.
Again, don't know how.
It's like, okay, I think did you really think these fusions through, or you try to come up with the literal freaky fusion? Think of the strangest ones you can think of.
Because they told them they could relate to them, and they could tell them how to work through their problems and what they needed to do. So I guess they had to have these characters that were this diverse in terms of being total opposites, and there's no way this could actually happen.
Right.
How in order to relate to them.
Right.
There was one more, right? Because there were three girls and three ghouls and the man star.
Oh, wow! I thought there were three.
Well, there were only three, and I'm just imagining there were four.
It's okay. If there was a fourth one, we're not recalling. You can let us know in the comments, because there's a lot of ghouls and monsters to recall in here.
And the ghouls were not friendly and they were kind of standoffish and antagonistic. And the man star, the zombie unicorn hybrid, he was chill and calm and quiet.
Yes.
And
ironically.
And like you said, that's the one Frankie felt.
Right. And I guess you can count Sparky as being a student there because he was a student there in the early times of Monster High, and he shows up. He's kind of an out of place student if you think about it, so he technically counts. And with him being involved, it kind of escalates into this being this monster. I guess now you can call him Monster of the Week type movie when it gets towards the end, because they actually get to a point where it gets a little sentimental, and you're actually surprised it gets this far or this deep into it, where you actually feel kind of sad. Not in a way where you don't want to watch it again, but it's just like, wow, they really were pulling at your heartstrings towards the end. If you don't want to spoil it, it was just like really something unexpected, but really great. And it showed that Sparky did have a heart underneath just wanting to be the best at in his school.
And the same for Rebecca Steam. Her name was Professor
Hezekiah Steam.
Right. And again, he created her because he wanted children. Sort of like Powerpuff Girls.
Yes.
And again, he recognized her because of the designs he had. And he told her, I know who you are. I designed you. And he didn't get to see her actually come to fruition, so that was another sad part.
Yeah.
That he created her, but he didn't get to see her.
Yes.
Alive. And we're like, oh no, you didn't know that. And he was so happy to see her and tell her that, you know, she was beautiful and he loved her. So yeah, you're right. They were pulling at heartstrings even with that story, because that was a sad backstory.
Yeah.
She had never met him or known him, and he never got to see her finish after he completed her. And they don't tell you what happened to him. You just know that something tragic happened.
Right. And we don't know if they were ever going to reveal that in a future film, or were they just going to leave it alone and you understood this is what happened, and they didn't get into details because it was a kids movie. But regardless, it was really well done.
And now you know why she looks steampunk, because he's steampunk. He's got his big mustache, he's dressed in the clothes, and that's why she has the steampunk look, because her dad, or creator, was during the steampunk era the way they had it.
Right.
So that was pretty cool.
Right. And this is one of our favorite films of Monster High. It was just really creative. It was really fun. They took advantage of just about 99% of what they had in their script, and the lessons about family and heritage and lineage were all very well done. And we really missed that these were the types of stories that Monster High told before the 2 reboots.
And what I really liked is they didn't have anything where they were saying one group was better than the other, one monster type was better than another, any of that. Everyone appreciated and respected everyone's heritage, which is really a nice part. You're not going to see that in Monster High now. That's never going to happen again.
No!
But in this version, love yourself, freaky flaws and all, that's the way it was, and that's what made this movie so endearing.
Right. And we just really love this movie, and this is one of our favorites to rewatch every year. So hopefully this is one of yours too, if not your most favorite.
Yes. Now if you've seen Freaky Fusion, Monster High Freaky Fusion, the original OG Monster High, the best Freaky Fusion, let us know what you think in the comments below. If you haven't seen it, it's not available on any streaming service. You actually have to buy them. They are available on Amazon all the time somehow. And they have pretty good deals. You can even get some as a double feature where you have 2 different movies in one package. So go there if you haven't seen it. Invest in purchasing them. You should buy all of them, actually.
Right.
Come back and let us know what you think. We know you're going to love it. It's a really fun movie. As you mentioned, it's fun, endearing, it pulls at your heartstrings, and it lets you know how much these characters in this school really love each other.
Right. And if you haven't already, subscribe for updates, weekly videos on your favorite anime series, anime shows, and all things animation.
Absolutely.
And more Monster High, right?
Yes, we're almost done covering the entire original series and this first reboot.
Yes. So, thank you so much for watching Rask Entertainment.
And Mom Entertainment.
Have a fantastic day.
Peace.